You got to work hard and be persistent. You know,
Yeah.
you get hundreds of no's for every yes, and you're almost like an old-time miner out there looking for gold. You're going to find lots of dirt and rocks, but you don't let that discourage you. You let the little pieces of gold you find encourage you.
One life, one passion, one focus.
Hey, remember the Dire Straits song Money for Nothing, written from the perspective of an appliance store worker commenting that the life of successful musicians is all play and no work? Reality is, in order for full-time musicians to make ends meet, they must rely on multiple revenue streams. They face uphill battles just trying to book gigs, get publicity, and manage band members. Then they have to have enough spark to catch fire and give audiences a memorable performance. Colin Powell once said, "A dream doesn't become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work." My guests today are working hard to live their dream. They provide valuable insight into what it takes to be a full-time working musician.
It's time to get down on the one.
Oh yeah, I'm here at the Recordium, which is the headquarters and recording studio for The Symbols. The Symbols are a blues, funk, rock band based in Fort Collins, Colorado. Formed in 2011 by veteran guitarist Jazzco and vocalist, songwriter, bassist Mersal, The Symbols represent a melting pot of blues rock, urban funk, Motown roots, and soul revival, performing 150 dates a year across Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, California, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. The Symbols are the recipients of the 2018 FOCO MA Peer Awards for Hardest Working Band and represented the Mile High Blues Society in Memphis, Tennessee in January of 2018 for the International Blues Challenge, making it to the semifinals. They've also received the 2017 Holly Award for Best Arranger from Colorado Blues Society. The Symbols have shared the stage with many national acts such as the Danielle Badkind, Vixen, Tommy Castro, and many more. The Symbols also have a new album out titled Catching Fire, and I got to do background vocals on a couple of songs. Jazzco, Mersal, thanks for joining me on the On the One podcast.
All right, glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
So, give me your individual backgrounds. Let's start with Jazzco.
Well, I started playing rock guitar as a teenager, and then I discovered classical guitar and flamenco guitar when I was 17, 18 years old. I got into blues when I was 21 and I discovered Django Reinhardt, and he was my gateway into jazz a little while after. So I've kind of explored a lot of different styles of music and tried to take my favorite parts of each of those and blend them into my own unique style.
Mersal?
Well, it all started with Disney for me when I was a little kid. I would hear some great singers singing on the movies that were coming out in the early 90s when I was a little baby. From there, I joined a Broadway school and kind of went into Broadway a little bit because there wasn't any program for like, I want to be a pop star or anything. So by about high school, I was doing musicals, and then I met this vocal coach who taught me how to belt. And then I kind of got into like blues and gospel. By the time I was 21, I had started a band with Jazzco called The Symbols. We had a 4-piece band, basically. I sang, he played guitar, we had a drummer and a bass player. The bass player quit, and we needed a bass player, so I took up the bass, and within 3 months of playing, I learned all of our songs, and I've been playing the bass ever since while I sing. I really like funky 16th note syncopation stuff.
So give me some more of your influences. Jazzco, you cited Django Reinhardt. What are some other influences for you?
Starting off, I listened to guys like Eddie Van Halen and Led Zeppelin, kind of the hard rock of that era. Then when I was getting into classical and flamenco guitar, I started listening to Sabicas, Rene Heredia. There's a regional guitar player who's really, really great at that stuff, Dave Beagle, who got me into some flamenco stuff.
Yeah, he's out of Loveland, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, fantastic guitar player, really cool guy. As far as jazz stuff, Wes Montgomery, there's a newer guy named Oz Noy that I really like that does kind of a mixture of jazz, funk, blues. I've listened to a lot of the popular guitar players, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck's a big influence. And then there's also a lot of guitar players that are big influences because I've met them personally, guys like Dave Beagle or Phil Brown or Renee Heredia, people that I've met and hung out or played with. And they're just as big, if not bigger influences than the famous guys, because you come in personal contact, and there's no substitute for learning something in person. You know, you can read a book, you can watch a video, look on the internet, you can learn stuff, but being there right face to face and trading ideas and licks and seeing and hearing how something's done is just irreplaceable.
And getting instant feedback and having that actual relationship with that person. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Marcel, give me some of your influences.
Being a teenager in like 2002, everything on the radio at that point. When I was younger, I wasn't as swayed by, the pop radio. And so there was another station in town that was like a Motown station that I heard when I was about 5. By the time about 2002 came around, I was 12, and Alicia Keys had a song on the radio called Fallen. I immediately heard that and was like, I want to be a singer. That was the defining moment. The same year, Norah Jones kind of came out with Don't Know Why. And that was also a huge influencer, because there's a pop singer woman who's kind of got jazz influences, and she's playing the piano and same with Alicia Keys. They both are playing the piano while they sing. And that's how I started out, was I would accompany myself on the piano while I sang.
So that's cool that you came up at a time when there were a lot of young, strong female musical influences.
Yeah, and they'll always be like women to me. You know what I mean? Like, because they might have been like 21, 18 when they came out, but I was a little kid and I was like, wow, they're so beautiful and so talented and so cool. Like Christina and Beyonce and Alicia, Aaliyah, rest her soul, and Amy Winehouse a couple years later, There's just been a great couple decades of women influencing music.
We're in your recording studio, the Recordium. So I think it's appropriate we talk about your latest release, Catching Fire. Tell me a few stories about that.
Well, this was an album that we decided to self-produce after working with producers on some other things. Actually, there is one track that we had a producer on this album, but we decided to self-produce it. We had learned a lot of stuff. One of the problems I think that bands have or artists have when they self-produce is just getting the thing done. So we had tried to launch this a couple times and got bogged down, and finally I just made up my mind, we're going to record fast and get it done, and that's how we did it.
How did you work out the songwriting duties?
I do most of it. I'm quick. Once I get started with something, I finish it. Especially with songwriting. I write a lot of songs, and that's something I've worked on really hard over the years.
How many songs do you think you write in a week? In
a week? When I'm really going through a lucrative time in my life, I'll write between 2 and 6 songs in a week.
Cool.
And they all just come to me, Once they start flowing, I just sit down and put them on paper, and I write down the chords next to them, and I record them in my phone.
And then, Jazzco, you probably help with the arrangements of the songs once they're written?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's one he wants to arrange and take into the band.
Then for the album, you were pretty much the producer, so you were sitting here doing the Pro Tools magic.
I use Pro Tools mainly kind of as a glorified recorder, so I don't know how much magic there is. I'm a believer in the magic is when you play the song and when you perform it and when you sing it. So it's just a matter of getting things mic'd up so that you got good tones, and then, getting the right inspirational moment, playing a few takes. And you can't do take after take after take after take and hope to get something. So usually my method is do 3 takes, decide if any of them is good enough, take a listen, take a little break, go back and do 3 takes more if you need, but do it in chunks and take breaks. We did all the drums and basic rhythm tracks in about 2 days, and then we got really busy with gigs and so forth, so the project sat for a while. And then we did the follow-up, guitar solo overdubs and harmony vocals and all that within about a week's period. And then it probably took about a week and a half to mix.
So tell me about some of the songs. What are some of the favorite songs that you guys have on the album? Or do you have favorites? Are they all your equally loved children?
Yeah, kind of in a way that's true. Each song is its own separate thing, and I don't necessarily view a favorite one versus a non-favorite one. What happens with the songs live, some of them lend themselves more easily to being played live. So on any given album, it seems like there's about half of them that we perform live a lot and half of them we don't. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the live ones are ones that I like more. They just somehow they're funner or easier, they get a better audience reaction, or there's something about them that they work better in a live setting.
Like ball bearings in her hips.
Right.
Like that song. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, people even show up and they request that one.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fun song. When I first heard it, I was like, I kind of moved my hips a little bit when I first heard it. I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. After Smile came out, I know people were asking, you guys coming out with something new?
Yeah.
So it's got to be a great feeling to finally have something to sell and provide new material for folks.
I never used to think I would put something better than Smile out, and we did it.
Yeah.
You know, well, with each one, you learn something new. With each one, it just gets better, right?
Hopefully so. That's what it's supposed to do.
This album is the pinnacle of my singing so far on a record.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing we've done. I'm really happy with it at this point.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
You know, you guys have a lot of outboard equipment, which suggests that you're kind of going for like a nice, warm analog sound.
Right. I've put most of my money into outboard gear versus digital gear and digital plugins and so forth. For me, it's a lot easier to turn knobs and hear how things sound than to try to program in numbers and so forth. And I just have fun doing it that way. The downside is the repeatability isn't as good as something that's just all digital, where you can get the exact repeated mix and then tweak one thing. You know, when I do a mix here, you're not going to get the same mix. So if you don't like it, you kind of start over in a way. You know, mixing is an art, and doing the old school analog thing is, for me, more fun.
Because that's the kind of music you listen to.
Right.
Yeah. Did you grow up listening to music on vinyl or on...
A vinyl and cassette.
Okay, yeah. Marcel, you're probably the CD generation, right?
I am CDs, but there were still cassettes in the beginning, and I was there for the transition from cassette to CD, embarrassingly.
In addition to having the Recordium and doing all of the live gigs, traveling all over the region... Actually, all over the country. I think you guys teach as well.
That's kind of it. The other half of the story is the music business side of it. Mm-hmm. The booking, the promoting, the web design, poster design, making videos, you know, doing all that kind of business BS stuff that you've got to do to stay in business.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of silly, almost.
How do you divvy that up? I get the sense you're more of the business managerial type as well as the creative type, and then you're kind of sales and promotion.
Yeah.
I get a sense
I'm
as well
pretty
as
good
creative.
at doing cold calls and booking a tour. But I mean, we kind of just trade hats in all the business stuff because both of us are equally kind of coming from the same place business-wise.
Yeah, there's a few things that Mayor does primarily and a few things that I do primarily, and then there's some crossover duties. Website design is mostly Mayor. Video editing is mostly Mayor. Booking, we trade off stuff. Promotions, we trade off stuff. I've been the one that's been trying to promote to magazines and blogs and so forth, trying to find booking agents and things like that. What we do a lot of times is just make a list and go down it and kind of check things off and say, okay, I'm going to do this, you do that.
Give us a sense of a typical day in the life of the Cymbals.
All right, here's how it starts. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, all right. What's going on today?
Typical day in the life of the Cymbals starts with getting up and practicing, then getting to do business work. It might be booking gigs. It might be promoting, making Facebook event pages or updating our web calendar or sending out lists of gigs that we booked to things like blues societies and online calendars and so forth. There's far more work to do in a day than there is time to do it. So you've just got to pick and choose what do you think is going to be the most effective in either getting gigs or promoting gigs. And then you've also got to set aside time for music, whether it's songwriting or practicing, or if you book a bunch of gigs and you show up and you can't play, well, that's no good. That's going to hurt you more than help you.
Right.
So you got to be able to deliver when you show up. So you've got to set some time, for working on music and so forth.
So this ain't no money for nothing and chicks for free proposition.
Despite what a lot of people think about being a professional full-time musician, being some kind of fun little fantasy career, it's actually a lot of work.
Yeah, you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit about it. I think they call people like you musicpreneurs.
I like it.
There's so many different angles. Today, the business has opened up a lot more. In some ways, it's more difficult. In some ways, it's easier. But I think one of the things that's a lot more multifaceted, and there's a lot more angles available with the internet and so forth today. So you've got to be creative and seek those angles out and try to figure out, how are you going to make a living or make money off this. Our sales are like 98% live on stage and 2% off our website. Then there's other people that do the opposite, and they sell on the web, and there's lots of different angles, and you just got to figure out what's going to work for you.
So what platforms are you guys on? I know you're on Spotify.
Yeah, we're on
Spotify, CD Baby, Amazon Music, iTunes, Google Play, our own website.
So as you can tell, Mayor does all that side of it because I don't know what platforms we're on.
I'm like, this is going to be legitimizing to get on all these things, so I sought it all out and figured it out.
You know, the most profitable thing is if somebody can buy a track off our site, which isn't streaming, it's, buying a download. But for us, that's the most profitable because then, on a 99-cent track, we get to keep 99 cents.
Right.
You'd sell it on something else, a 99-cent track, and we get, 5 cents or something. And it's like, well, who's getting the other 94 cents?
You guys recently won the 2018 FOCO MA Peer Award for Hardest Working Band. Tell us the story about that.
Well, we didn't go to the award show because we didn't know what was happening. We were too busy working.
So when they called your name, it was like, the Cymbals!
Nobody there, apparently.
So who accepted the award for you guys?
We went down to the FOCO MA headquarters at the Music District and picked up the award a week or so afterwards.
How did you find out?
On the internet, somebody on Facebook, somebody sent us a congratulations or something.
And you were like, what?
Yep, pretty much.
I guess that's the reason you won the award. You're out there busting your butts to get the music out and perform for the people. So, cool.
Yeah, sometimes that might be a case of having blinders on. You're so focused on what you're doing that maybe you miss things going on around you. But, there's only so many hours in the day and so much attention you can spend. And, so a lot of times we'll miss things because we're focused on trying to get things happening for us.
But you're getting a lot done. Let's talk about who's been in the Recordium.
We've had, local rock and blues bands like Maxwell Mudd.
Buzz Brothers.
And we've had a lot of solo artists. Sometimes people will come in and they need a backup band and we'll play on their record. There's a guy named Tony Zane that made a record here that brought in a bunch of other people. And he also used us as backup players and singers and so forth. Everything from solo to band thing. What we don't do really is electronic music. That's not our strength and not really our interest. So it's primarily live acts. I think the biggest thing we've had is about a 10 or 12 piece where they had a horn section, a couple guitars, harmonica, bass, drums, singer.
Any other memorable groups that have been through here?
Wooleye. And Victor Wooten stopped in and saw the studio once.
So, what advice would you give new musicians and those coming back to music?
Follow your passion.
Work on your music, practice, and make friends with as many musicians around you because they're not your competition, they're actually your allies. Your competition is stuff like Netflix and DVDs and other electronic forms of entertainment. And your allies are your other musicians. You'll get a lot of work from them. So try to make as many friends and allies as you can with other musicians. And for people that are coming back to it, make sure that you really love it and try to use some of your other life experiences. Figure out what they can do to help your music career. What did you have a background in that you're moving away from and coming back into music? And how can you take some of those lessons or ideas or concepts and apply them to music?
So if you've come out of, say, a business background, then use your networking skills. If you come out of marketing, use that skill.
If you want to be a successful pop musician, the thing to go to college for is marketing.
Yeah, I've been meeting people who have actually gotten their degree in music performance and music business. Which is important because it's not a given that you'll get a recording contract with a big firm. These are the days of the independents, and because it's so easy to record music with the technology, it's easy to get it out, then it's more of a democratized landscape.
It's easy to record, easy to get music out, tougher to make money on it.
I would say there's more than one success model in today's music business. I mean, there's a lot of DIY musicians, and that's pretty much what we are with the Cymbals. Our whole team is 2 people, and we do everything ourselves right now. It's amazing how much momentum 2 people can establish, without a label.
You got to work hard and be persistent,
Yeah.
You get hundreds of no's for every yes, and you're almost like a an old-time miner out there looking for gold. You're going to find lots of dirt and rocks, but you don't let that discourage you. You let the little pieces of gold you find encourage you. In the past month or so, I've probably sent out queries to about 70 different blogs and magazines trying to get them to review our new CD, and I've got responses back from 5 of them. So that means I got 65 no's and 5 yeses. And I don't care about those 65 no's, I care about those 5 yeses, because now I can start to build up a thing when I send to the next place. I've got 5 places that have reviewed it, so it looks like, oh, it's getting reviewed a lot. My next 70 I send to, I'll probably get 8 instead of 5 people saying yes. And then that'll build more. Then the next 70 I send to, I'll probably get 15 that say yes.
You're focused on that positive goal of getting to yes.
Right. You hear so many no's, whether it's a club owner turning you down or a music blog or a radio station or a festival. It can get depressing. You say, everyone's saying no. Well, not everybody is saying no. It just seems like that. There are some yeses, and you follow those little veins of success.
Yeah, and that's when you have to really just be persistent, like you said, and get your hustle on.
Yep. Yeah, hustle. Musician and hustler. That's your 2 things.
Yeah.
You're doing practice and hustle.
With a little thick skin on the side.
And you have to think about, what is your definition of success? Is it, making a great living, playing music, but maybe not being famous, and just loving what you do? Because for us, that's what it is.
Whatever level you get at, you're always seeing what the next level is and trying to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got friends saying, I've never played a paying gig. I would love to just get a gig that gets $100. And for us, that's just like, everyday normal thing. That's a very low paying gig. But to some people, that's a huge aspiration. But then once you get there, then you say, I'd love to play every week for $100 instead of just get one. And then, okay, now I'm doing that. Now I'd love to play every week for $300. Wherever you're at, you can always see what the next level is, and you're trying to get there. But if you're not happy, playing for 5 people, then you're not going to be happy playing for 50, and you're not going to be happy playing for 1,500. So you've got to be happy with what you're doing, but you still can focus on what the next level is.
That's a good point. And as a band and as a music business, you're always in a state of becoming.
Right.
Because you're always looking over the horizon to the next thing.
It's a process. It's
not a destination.
Right.
Yeah.
Enjoy the journey, because that's what it is.
Exactly. I usually ask my guests this important question. What's your why for music? Why music for your life?
This is a twofold question for me with a twofold answer. The first is, why do I play music? And I play music because I fell in love with music, and I'm really thankful that I fell in love with music. It's the thing that brings joy to my life. It's a constant challenge, no matter how much you've played or practiced music, there's always more to go. So it's something that never gets old. It's super fun. I love listening to music. To love playing music, you got to be a fan of listening to music. And a lot of people, I think, that aren't musicians never really, for whatever reason, fell in love with music deeply. So I'm very thankful that I was in a position where I heard music. When I was a kid, I got some rock tapes, probably Van Halen, AC/DC, Jimi Hendrix and stuff, and just fell in love with that sound and thought, wow, this is the coolest thing. I want to do that. And so that's why I play music. Why I play music for a living is at some point in my early teenage years, it dawned on me, hey, I'm going to have to start to get a job at some point and work and make money and make a living. And that just scared the shit out of me. I did not want to do a regular job or count beans all day or shovel rocks or whatever. So I said, okay, I got to figure out some way to make this music pay for itself so that I can afford to keep doing music all day. And so that's why I became a musician as a profession. I had no other real skills, and I had a bad attitude about jobs. So I just forced myself saying, this is what I'm going to do.
You didn't want to spend your life in a cubicle village.
Right, yeah. And the cool thing about being an independent musician as a job is that you're your own boss, so nobody can really fire you. Maybe a club fires me, maybe a student drops, or maybe a band doesn't come back to the recording or whatever. But there's so many other clubs, so many other students, so many other bands that you're your own boss, and as long as you're motivated to keep working on it, you can take it as far as you want.
My whole life I wanted to relate to other people, and I didn't want to do it for money. I never really even thought about that part of it. I just was so in love with singing from such a young age that by my teenhood I got really good at it, and people were telling me, hey, maybe this is something you should pursue full time. Once I got a heavy dose of some life experiences, I had something to write about, and I had messages that I had taught myself that I could go and tell other people, wisdom that I had learned along the way in the form of song. I felt then that I had a place and a purpose in the world, in life, that I could be helpful for myself and for others. And I've met so many interesting people along the way, and a couple weeks ago we did a gig with Chase the Music, which is our friend Clark Hodges.
Our friend Clark Hodge.
He took us to a real working orphanage in Denver. It's not technically called an orphanage, but orphans of the state live there. That was one of the kind of events that recently reminded me why I'm doing this. Because I get something out of it, and other people get something out of it.
You're meeting a need.
I'm meeting a need in me and in others.
And that's part of the wanting to be able to relate to people, to reach out to people, and to kind of serve their needs, meet their needs.
Yeah. It's a servant role, because you have a duty to your audience to study and know your music. The world deserves to have some great art out there.
As a songwriter, it must be rewarding to be able to reach the minds and hearts of the audience.
I guess a recent example of a time that we reached the hearts of somebody in the audience was that gig where we went into a home for orphans of the state. I looked one of them in the eye while I was singing, and he started crying. I think it was because we could feel something mutual together. Even though our experiences might not have been the same thing, there was something common there, something very human about stripping down your emotions and performing in front of an audience, and especially a vulnerable audience. There was something really beautiful.
You made a connection.
I made a connection.
That's cool. That's beautiful. Well, Marcel, Jazzco, thank you so much for bringing me into the Recordium. I love being in this place. It's a really cool feeling. So thanks for having me here. Thanks so much for your stories.
Oh, thank you for having us on your podcast, and thank you for coming here.
Thanks, Phil.
What better way to end than with a heartfelt story of how music sparks human connection? Marcel mentioned Clark Hodge, who I spoke to back in episode 2 about Chase the Music, an organization that brings impactful experiences to kids by way of music. The Symbols' latest album is Catching Fire, which you can find at www.thesymbols.net. There, you can learn more about the band and find out where they're playing. In late summer, the Symbols host the I Slept With the Band Traveling Music Festival. You can rock out and camp out with a bevy of bands and fans in the great outdoors. Go to www.thesymbols.net to sign up for their newsletter and stay informed. Thanks so much for listening to the On the One podcast. If you like what you've heard, please spread the word and tell your friends. You can subscribe to the podcast on the major podcast directories. I'm your host, Phil Donaldson, and as always, you can email me at phil@phildonaldson.com. Let me know what topics you're interested in for future episodes. Until next time, may you find your superpower, fuel your passion, and light it up.